this talk is not about religion. This is just about the snakes and what happens to them and what's going on in these snake handling ceremonies. So, go ahead. All right, so this is basically what I propose. And I hope I can show you these 4 things throughout the talk. So the first one is that snake handlers are not innocents in the sense that they are well aware of the behavior of the snakes and they take advantage of it. And I believe they're well aware of the laws that they break, and they are well aware of what they're doing to the animals. The second thing is, usually snakes that are in the care of religious snake handlers are in very poor condition and poor health. That's a strategic decision that they make so that they're not as likely to get bitten. Next thing is the handling techniques that they use are damaging and stressful to the snakes, and I'm sure you will believe that once you see some of the videos I have. And then lastly, I want to kind of point out how I think they get away with it. And one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is in kind of researching this and doing some reading, the anthropology side, the psychology side of the literature claims that biologists have no idea how these people are able to handle these snakes. How can they pick up a rattlesnake or a copperhead and not have it bite them? Well, I think any snake person can figure that out. But because a scientist can't equivocally say every single time you handle a snake this way it's not going to bite you, they can't give an explanation that is acceptable to the anthropology side, which I think is kind of not okay. And so one of the reasons I gave this talk about biology of the rattlesnakes, and I'm going to tell you guys the same thing, is that if you're a snake person, we can't be afraid to speak out against this just because it has to do with religion. You don't need to criticize people's religion, but it is, in my opinion, not only acceptable, but it's incumbent upon us to criticize it and say, look, these animals are being hurt. So, go ahead, Jim. All right, so we were involved, and some of you probably remember seeing this on the news. In 2008, we were part of a very large raid in which Kentucky Fish and Wildlife actually raided several different, there was one person who was not a religious snake handler, but the other people were religious snake handlers who were illegally dealing in copperheads and rattlesnakes. And during the course of this operation, which they called Twice Shy, over 200 snakes were bought from religious snake handlers by undercover officers. And this is after the law that controlled how many of any wild-caught animal can be in possession by somebody, and I'm sure you guys hope you know that the law also states you cannot buy or sell any native wild-caught animal in the state of Kentucky. So these were primarily wild-caught copperheads, but there were also quite a few timber rattlesnakes. At the end, in 2008, over 125 snakes were seized in one day. Jim and I went into, you could do a lot better than that with wild-caught animals.
Several tested positive.
Yeah, we had paramyxo, which I'm pretty sure came from the animals that came from the swap meet and not from wild populations, but they had all sorts of interesting different bacterial infections. And we had snakes growing fungus inside their body. We had, well, of course, parasites, and they all came to us. Just, Jim has a phrase, death on a cracker.
Can't they just spray those diseases while you're there?
Maybe that's what happened, is we weren't training enough for them. I don't know, but they were in bad shape when we got them, and almost impossible to save them at that point because they were in such bad shape.
Yeah, the urates were so impacted that they couldn't, because they didn't get any water.
Well,
Wow.
these are the boxes that I actually took the snakes in. We ended up having to give these back. They're really pretty, right? But I don't really think any of us would consider that a home for 7 or 8 copperheads. They're about this big.
Mine had 20 and no water.
Yeah, there's no water, no substrate, nothing.
Is that cedar?
Yeah, this one is. This one is. The one over there is walnut. I'm not sure what this one is.
Yeah, cedar.
Yeah, you're right. Jim was actually looking around and opened up a freezer thinking, well, maybe this is where the rodents are, and it was actually full of timbers. Like one of those kind of cube chest freezers, just completely full. Yeah, so, I mean, they didn't know we were coming. You know, we were at their doors at 5 and 6 in the morning. So that's how these animals were living all the time. Go ahead. Received another confiscation that was an undercover buy, and our intern took this photo like through the door of the quarantine room, so it's a terrible photo, but you can see the important things. There's 2 copperheads, or excuse me, there's 10 copperheads and 6 timbers in that can.
What?
Every single one of them was in the box that you can see. See it right here?
Oh, gosh. Oh, good lord. I thought it went snake and just some stuff on the bottom, but
Yeah, no, that sheet.
I thought that was a skill of the hamburger.
It's difficult to see the picture because it's so blurry, but our poor keeper just kind of had to flop them all into the can because she opened the box and they were all just like, get us out of here. So 2 copperheads and 5 timbers did not survive. We had 3 of the timbers necropsied by our vet, and basically, you know, science words, but basically what happened is they died of dehydration. So they were dehydrated for so long, kept without water for so long that it caused kidney failure and liver failure. And they, even though of course we gave them water when they came in, you can't reverse the damage that's already been done. So, you know, it's just disgusting when you get things like this and you're trying to do what you can to keep them alive, but at some point they're already too far gone. So, yeah.
Alright, so you guys being like experienced like handling these venomous snakes, what kind of shape would they have to be in to get all those in that little box? It seems like
That's a good point.
It seems like they'd just be going everywhere.
Well,
Yeah, well, keep in mind too that they're probably using their hands to get them back in there. You know, it'd be like you putting a bunch of corn snakes in a box.
That is-
So, how do they get away with it? First of all, they're choosing snakes that wouldn't usually be fatal, even if they are healthy. I mean, they're going to swap meets. They could get cobras and saw-scaled vipers and use those in their ceremonies if they really wanted to tempt God or fate or whatever it is, but that's not what they're doing. They're choosing to use things that are not usually as serious. The snakes used are in extremely poor condition. Even healthy snakes don't try to bite that often. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. And then the last thing is their technique. Go ahead, Jim. So, when I was putting this talk together, I thought, I wonder how often snakes actually try to bite us. So, just over 2 days, I had our keepers and myself keep track of just our daily activities. So, giving water, cleaning cages, Jim extracting. So, over 2 days, we did something with 239 snakes, and 22 of them tried to strike at us. So that's a pretty low number. It's like,
and those were mainly Western Diamondbacks.
yeah, those are mostly Western Diamondbacks during venom extractions. So that's a pretty stressful time for the snake. The Taylor at the time was taking care of the snakes that we got in 2013, the ones that were all in the bucket. And she said none of them had ever struck at her that she could ever remember in over a year of taking care of them. So, you know, maybe we should draw this out a little bit longer. Certainly, you know, I've got a few rattlesnakes that I open the door and they always strike at me, but that's very unusual. Most of the time, they're not interested in biting, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys know this already, but even a venomous snake has no interest in biting you unless it really feels like it has to.